President Trump is now the first American president to be impeached twice. 10 House Republicans broke with their party, joining 222 Democrats to approve a single article of impeachment. It charges the president with inciting the insurrection at the Capitol 1 week ago, an attack that left 5 people dead and dozens more injured. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says she will immediately send the article of impeachment to the Senate so that the president can stand trial. But Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says that the trial will not happen before President-elect Joe Biden is inaugurated on January 20th. Here's CBS News' chief congressional correspondent Nancy Cordes with the latest.
On this vote, the ayes are 232.
Voting in a Capitol that has now become a fortress, House members impeached the 45th president for putting them in harm's way 1 week ago today, as they were trying to ratify the results of the election.
This Capitol was stormed. People died because of the big lies that were being told by this president.
If inciting a deadly insurrection is not enough to get a president impeached, then what is?
The vote comes 13 months
Donald John Trump
after President Trump's first impeachment,
for high crimes and misdemeanors,
where he was charged with abuse of power and obstruction of Congress as part of a scheme to pressure Ukrainian leaders.
Donald Trump is a living, breathing, impeachable offense.
He is unrepentant. Congress must act for the good of this country.
Unlike the last impeachment, this time 10 Republicans voted yes.
There was a domestic threat at the door of the Capitol, and he did nothing to stop it.
I am not choosing a side, I'm choosing truth. It's the only way to defeat fear.
Today's article of impeachment accuses Mr. Trump of sparking an insurrection, citing not just his comments last Wednesday.
These people are not going to take it any longer.
But also his false claims about his loss.
We won the election by a landslide.
And his refusal to concede.
That was a rigged election.
House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy didn't deny any of it.
The president bears responsibility for Wednesday's attack on Congress by mob rioters.
But he and other Republican members insisted now is not the time to punish President Trump.
They know that it is impossible for the Senate to remove him before his term expires. So what is the point?
I'm not saying the president didn't exercise poor judgment. But to criminalize political speech by blaming lawless acts on the president's rhetoric is wrong, Madam Speaker, and a very dangerous precedent. The criminals who stormed the Capitol that day acted on their own volition. They are responsible for their actions.
If we want unity, this is not the way.
Democrats rejected that argument.
Never as a criminal defense attorney did I say, Judge, yeah, my guy completed the armed robbery, but let's heal now. No, there was accountability. There was accountability then. There should be accountability now.
And so the battle moves now to the Senate. Speaker Pelosi has already named 9 impeachment managers who will serve as prosecutors in the trial to come. Senate Leader Mitch McConnell said today he will not bring the Senate back early, meaning the trial could start just as President-elect Biden is taking office.
President Trump watched the impeachment vote unfold from his private office in the White House. Shortly after the vote, the White House released a recorded message, but the president did not address the impeachment. Rather, he commented and condemned last week's attack on the Capitol. He also addressed reports of more demonstrations planned ahead of the inauguration.
Whether you are on the right or on the left, a Democrat or a Republican, there is never a justification for violence. No excuses, no exceptions. America is a nation of laws. Those who engaged in the attacks last week will be brought to justice. Now I am asking everyone who has ever believed in our agenda to be thinking of ways to ease tensions, calm tempers, and help to promote peace in our country.
For more now, I am joined by Nancy Cordes, along with CBS News White House correspondent Ben Tracy. Thank you both. Ben, as we saw in that video, President Trump is now condemning the violence that we saw last week and is urging against violence ahead of the inauguration, though he still hasn't acknowledged that President-elect Biden actually won the election. What is the president's goal here? What kind of messaging do you expect from him in this last week for him in office?
Well, this video is really curious. So this comes just after the president was impeached, and yet in this more than 5-minute long video, he does not mention impeachment at all. Instead, a week after the attack on the Capitol and after this severe blow to his legacy, he's now condemning the violence in the most forceful terms yet. So this does appear to be an effort by the president to try to somehow put the genie back in the bottle and make it look like he is on the side of law and order instead of the side of inciting the folks who went to the Capitol and did what they did a week ago today, and which is the reason that he got impeached. So this seems to be the president kind of completely ignoring what happened today in terms of him being impeached. I can tell you here at the White House, impeachment's been met with a collective shrug. They all expected this to happen. They knew the outcome was not going to be good. There are very few people left here in the building, and those who are really are just kind of shrugging their shoulders as they pack their boxes now with just about 6 days left in this administration.
And Nancy, you heard Ben talking about them shrugging their shoulders over at the White House. Of course, they have been there before. This impeachment vote is historic for several reasons. I'm hoping you can talk to us a bit more about the significance of President Trump now being impeached for a second time.
Sure. Well, the fact that he has been impeached and it is bipartisan raises the chances, obviously, that when this goes over to the Senate for a trial, that perhaps he could be convicted. It would take a 2/3 majority, so about 17 Republicans at least joining all of the Democrats in order to convict. It would prevent him from ever being able to run again. Obviously, he will probably be out of office at that point, so he can't be removed. But you know, the fact that Republicans from every political stripe really voted yes today, just a handful of them, but you had conservative members, more moderate members, a member of leadership, a member who just started last week. So a real cross-section of the GOP. And what we'll be watching now is to see whether that influences some Republican senators who are trying to decide which way they're going to go in the Senate.
And Nancy, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says he won't recall the Senate early to begin an impeachment trial. So what are we looking at in terms of a timeline for these proceedings? And is this an effort to take some of the momentum out of the movement for impeachment?
Sure. It's also an effort to avoid a couple of very undesirable outcomes. One is that, as you've seen, the city is really in lockdown right now, and there are a lot of concerns about the inauguration. And Senate Leader Mitch McConnell pointed out that if the Senate were to come back and be consumed by an impeachment trial, that not only they, but law enforcement might be sort of taking their eyes off the real prize here, which is the fact that a week from today, a new president is going to be sworn in. He says everyone should be focused on the safety and security for that event. Beyond that, we've also got another major tectonic shift that is about to take place in the Senate, which is that Democrats are going to take control sometime in the next week and a half or so. We don't know exactly when, because it all hinges on when these two Democratic senators-elect who just won their races in the state of Georgia can get certified as the winners and come up here to Washington to be sworn in. At that point, Democrats will take control of the Senate and thereby take control of this Senate trial and have a much bigger say in how exactly it goes down. How long will it last? That's anyone's guess. The last one, 12 months exactly from this week. That one lasted 3 weeks. Now, that was a more complicated situation. I don't think anyone wants the Senate to be tied up for 3 weeks this time around. But, you know, it is not going to be a blip. It is going to be all-consuming at a time, most likely, when President-elect Biden is hoping that the Senate will spend at least some of its time focusing on confirming his nominees for his cabinet.
And Ben, I want to bring you into this discussion about McConnell in part because he says he hasn't decided yet on whether or not he would vote to convict President Trump. What do we know about the relationship between the president and Senator McConnell right now? And do you know if they have spoken since the attack on the Capitol last week?
We don't believe they have spoken, and this relationship seems to be pretty fractured at this point. McConnell seems to be signaling that he's trying to wash his hands of President Trump. And also keep in mind that Mitch McConnell is married to Elaine Chao, who was President Trump's Secretary of Transportation. She resigned in protest last week, so there doesn't seem to be any love lost between the two sides here. I can tell you that I did talk to a senior administration official here today at the White House. I asked about McConnell's comments that he may be open to convicting the president by basically saying he wants to hear the evidence before he makes a decision in the case that's going to be before the Senate. They heard that here. They're aware what that may mean, that he may be signaling to other senators that you are free to vote to convict the president if you see fit. However, I can tell you that as of today, the White House feels confident there still are not enough votes in the Senate, they believe, to convict the president.
And Ben, along those same lines, what sort of defense is the president actually planning to mount for this impeachment trial when it gets to the Senate?
That's a great question, and it's completely unclear at this point. I mean, unlike a year ago when the president was being impeached, there was a war room of lawyers here at the White House. They were signaling in the media what their legal strategy was going to be. There is none of that this time. Nobody is publicly defending the president right now. The closest he's gotten is himself, where he came out yesterday and said that what he said at that rally before the attack on the Capitol was, quote, totally appropriate. Obviously, that's not true, and most people don't believe that, even members of his own party, as we saw today. So that's not going to cut it as a defense in the Senate. So the president is going to need to find some sort of coherent defense. He's also going to need to find a legal team, and it's not clear who that will be at this point. We do know that his personal attorney, Jay Sekulow, and the White House counsel, Pat Cipollone, who were part of the defense team a year ago during impeachment, are not going to be a part of it this time. The only person that may be a part of it is the person who has said publicly that he would like to be a part of it, and that's Rudy Giuliani.
Interesting, too, given the charges in this particular case and what so many members have thought about Giuliani's comments that preceded the president's. All right, Nancy, last question to you. More than 30 House Democrats are also calling for an investigation into, quote, suspicious behavior and access given to visitors one day before the Capitol attack. Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill claims that she actually saw members of Congress leading, and this is her word, reconnaissance tours. What information or demands are these lawmakers pursuing? And are they actually accusing their colleagues of being complicit in the attack that we saw on the Capitol?
Well, Lana, this is a really tense situation, as you can imagine, when you've got members of Congress essentially accusing their own colleagues of participating in some kind of inside job. We don't have all the details, but essentially what Sherrill said publicly was that she saw some of her colleagues providing tours to individuals a day in advance of the riot that you're looking at right now, individuals who later went on to be involved in the storming of the Capitol. Now, it's not surprising that she would have noticed this because no one is giving tours right now. The Capitol is on lockdown, not just because of the security situation, but because of the pandemic. And you aren't allowed to bring members of the public in for tours like lawmakers so frequently do in normal times. And so she has passed all of this information along to law enforcement agencies. And we have heard from a number of Democratic lawmakers and Republican lawmakers, frankly, who say they're concerned about some of their colleagues' comments that some of their colleagues have made on social media, the desire among some of their colleagues to cart weapons onto the House floor, which is not allowed. So there are a lot of open questions about security right now, and I think we're really sort of just at the start of this investigation into whether and how any members of Congress may have given any help to people who had the idea in mind already to storm the Capitol, get inside, and do damage.
It's mind-boggling. And inauguration right around the corner. All right, Nancy Cordes, Ben Tracy, thank you both.
Sure.